All right, check us out. We're live. Let's go. All right. Welcome to Hacks and Jacks. It's Sunday, May 4th. We're recording after a beautiful day of baseball. Rainy day in upstate New York, though. We're scheduled for rain pretty much all week. Scott, how are things up in your neck of the woods?
Sort of cold and rainy and depressing. That's Michigan for you.
I was gonna say we live where we live because we chose to, unfortunately, or something like that, I guess.
I passed the bar here. I'm not taking that thing again. I'm stuck here, guys. I'm not going anywhere.
Oh, we've got a nice long slate of baseball to talk about. We've got an update to your top 150 hitters list, of course. Some transactions to look into, and a nice long night to do it. So let's dive right in. We'll jump straight to injuries and transactions. Couple of quick team changes here. Cody Clemens was acquired by the Twins. He promptly homers in Boston. Is he relevant in anything other than deep and only leagues? Yeah.
No.
Beautiful.
Cool story. He was a Tiger for a little while too, but that's it. That's all I have to say about him.
Yeah. His dad's name is Roger. That's kind of the only reason he's notable. Brian De La Cruz was DFA'd by the Atlanta Braves. He was quickly claimed by the New York Yankees. And the Braves also sent Jared Kelenic to AAA. It's not so much the De La Cruz change of teams or the Kelenic's, demotion that's the story here. The story is that Atlanta seems to be confident in rolling with Alex Verdugo and Eli White in the corner outfield positions until Ronald Acuna returns.
Well, that might be another month, so they're going to be putting that to the test. I mean, I guess it's fine. Verdugo's been a good hitter for them lately. Granted, they were just in Colorado, which helps, but and they faced all their last 16 games are all against right-handers. So that is very helpful for Alex Verdugo. But that's fine. Again, in deep leagues, a guy who leads off for an offense that isn't as good as we want it to be, but still not bad. That's something, right? I think in points leagues, I'm a bit more interested in Alex Verdugo because that's a skill set, doesn't strike out a lot, puts a lot of balls in play. That's very helpful for a leadoff hitter. But, he had an even better leadoff job last year and didn't do a ton with it. So to expect him to do a whole lot with this one is a bit of a tall order.
We'd be remiss if we didn't also mention Stuart Fairchild and Eddie Rosario, the other outfielders on that roster. I don't think either of them are much of a threat to White and Verdugo's playing time, but we could see a platoon. We could see some different things out of Atlanta. They could bring up somebody, I guess, but they don't have much depth in AAA.
No, the only notable thing here, Eli White, he's like a low end streamer in deep leagues. Don't think too hard about it. So don't worry about him. Eddie Rosario is going to hit 2 home runs in one game at some point, and someone's going to ask me if I care, and I don't. He's just, he's always been the same guy. He swings really hard. He swings incredibly often, and that skill set deteriorates really fast with age.
Well, it sounds like the Braves are going to be clamoring to get Acuna back in that lineup, and a little thin until that happens.
Yeah, they're literally streaming outfielders. That's basically what they're doing. It's like fantasy streaming outfielders. They're just going for it. They're just trying it, whoever they can get.
We'll see if anybody else pops up on waivers for the Braves that they can scoop up and plug in for a week and then jettison on a Sunday night.
Truly. What do you think that was with Brian De La Cruz? That was streaming an outfielder until they found a better one named Alex Verdugo and got him warmed up in the minors. That was it. That was the whole thing. And he's not relevant in New York either. Just to be clear, maybe if he got a starting job, but he won't because they signed him and sent him to AAA. They're having a hard enough time giving playing time to Jason Dominguez, who they are infinitely more interested in. Brian De La Cruz he's not an AL only ad in my eyes.
We'll change gears. We'll take a look at who has been sent to the injured list this year. And though it's a relatively short list, it's a star-studded one. We'll start with a guy who's had a really, really solid April, and that's Seattle utility man Dylan Moore. He was sent to the IL this week, and the Mariners have brought up outfielder Samad Taylor to take his roster spot. Losing more stings a little bit, especially with his production against lefties. And Taylor doesn't really add anything to the equation, right?
No, and hopefully more. We expect him back this week, like midweek. I think they'll have a series that starts on like Thursday. They'll probably bring him back then. So, he's a streamer though. So it's been kind of cool to see his strikeout rate be a little lower than it's been for full seasons in the past, but we've seen him go off against, we've seen him go off against left-handed pitching before, and that's really what he's been doing. Again, it's a stream for some power and speed. The ratios are going to collapse. I don't expect any of this stuff to stick around, but he stole 32 bases last year. As a mostly platoon, like not platoon, more like super utility. So Dylan Moore has usefulness if what you're searching for is speed. Everything else that you're getting is just gravy, right? Like don't expect extra power or ratios to stick around, but if you need speed, he'll continue to do that for you.
Well, speaking of guys who have had a decent month and might not be the most consistent, you've got Cincinnati outfielder Austin Hayes and Los Angeles Dodgers utility man Tommy Edman both going to the IL this week as well. Hayes obviously with that friendly home ballpark, and Edman with great production in a stacked Dodgers lineup. Fantasy managers are going to miss both of those guys, but should be able to replace them for the most part, right?
Probably. So Austin Hayes was a streaming outfielder that you were using. Hopefully you picked him up for that series in Colorado, had 2 hits in each of those games, including 2 home runs and 2 doubles. God, it'd be great if he landed in Colorado, right? That's the kind of player they need, a guy who just swings at everything, because the breaking stuff doesn't really move out there, so you can't fool him as bad. But Austin Hayes is a notoriously streaky hitter because he's very aggressive. He's sporting a 412 BABIP, which is like a really basic number to use, but it's not one that's going to continue. We see him get hot, and then we see him just get terribly cold, as Brett, you've seen more than anybody when he was over in Baltimore. You just see him get really hot, look really good for like a month, and then just be unrosterable for a month after that. So he's kind of just a guy with Tommy Edman. Obviously he's been a hero. But that we'll see how that goes. Hopefully he's not gone long. I haven't seen a lot on this. It's an ankle injury. He's been carrying teams, even though he's not walking. Who needs to walk when you can hit? Right. So with Edman, he's someone that you have to hold, right? So with Austin Hayes, if you've got a limited IL, you probably just let him go, right? Unless we hear that it's like a minimum stay and there's nothing on your wire, you probably just let him go. Tommy Edman, I do think you have to hold. He's been moving up the rankings. He's in a good situation. They've been giving him plenty of playing time. So you'll hold him if you can. Hopefully your IL isn't too full. Although I know you and I are both dealing with that in a variety of leagues, as we all are. So with Edman, it's just an ankle. That's not a long-term thing. It's not something that's going to bother him too much as he comes out. You kind of just gotta, you curse your bad luck and hope that you can just find a quick replacement off the wire.
Well, speaking of guys that you're probably going to hang on to, I know you talked about hanging on to Edman. Los Angeles Angels outfielder Mike Trout, unfortunately, is on the IL again, this time with a bone bruise. And then Jazz Chisholm, the New York Yankees infielder, also headed to the IL. Looks like he'll be out for 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the report you're getting. Those are 2 guys that we're stashing, right?
Yeah. So with Trout, he says it's not going to be too long. He sort of explained his injury and he was like, "Oh yeah, my bones just bumped together," or something like that. I'm like, "Oh, that makes sense. You have like no cartilage left in your body. So, it's going to happen to him here and there." So Trout's been off to a terribly slow start. Although I shouldn't say too slow. He hit 9 home runs, right? He's batting 179, but he has 9 home runs in 29 games. It's sort of a weird trend we've seen with Mike Trout in each of the last 2 seasons. He has exactly 29 games in 2024 and in 2025. In those 58 games, he has 19 home runs, but he's batting like 200. So I'm not really sure what to make of that right now. I probably need to do a little bit more digging, but he's hitting tons of barrels. He's still hitting the ball hard. Some of it is probably bad luck. He's not pulling the ball quite as much, I guess. And he does hit a lot of fly balls, which can really hurt your batting average. We love fly balls when they leave the park. As I've talked about every week, we don't love fly balls when they don't leave the park because they're almost always outs. So I'm wondering if it's just a little bit of something that can definitely, batted ball, like spray charts for most players are fairly random in small samples, unless your name is like Isak Paredes and you always do the same thing every time. With Mike Trout, I expect that that's going to correct itself. And what's great is even though it hasn't done that lately, he's still just bashing home runs. So yeah, you're definitely holding him. Jazz Chisholm, you have to hold him as well. It sucks that it's, for 4 to 6 weeks. And I know he's been hurting you here and there, but there's not, you can't let this guy go back. You can't let someone else have him for free, right? Even if you're a super pessimist, right? You live in New York, you watch Yankees daily, and you're just so mad at the way he's performed. It doesn't matter. You can't let everyone else have him for free. Like I wanted to make that point just because hopefully none of you are thinking of that. But if you are one of those types that wants to just rage drop a guy who, was drafted within, at this point of the year, I'd say like the top 50 hitters, and they're, going to play for most of the rest of the season, you can't just rage drop them, because what you're doing is you're giving one of your opponents a free lunch, and you just can't do it.
We move on to some unfortunate news out of Boston. First baseman Triston Casas out for the rest of the season. This will be the second consecutive season that he's missed the majority of. Who are some guys that maybe you're looking for on the wire to replace Triston Casas if you're his fantasy manager?
I mean, yeah, it's a huge bummer. This guy's just had a bunch of injuries. I think what's lucky for some people is that they probably already got another first baseman, because we've seen a ton of them come up this year. We've seen a ton of them really kind of break out. If you need a short-term replacement, Ty France is hitting. He's probably on every single waiver wire outside of like deep 15-team league. So he should be available. Ryan O'Hearn, I haven't looked at the pitching matchups for the next week or so, but Ryan O'Hearn against right-handed pitching is about as safe as it gets if you need some pop. Ryan O'Hearn can definitely do that for you. Pretty decent ratios too. He'll just sit against the lefties, and that's fine. Let's see who else. Really, that's probably about it at the moment. A guy that's come up a lot is Eric Wagaman. So he's eligible at first, third, and outfield down in Miami. And I can't tell you that I know a lot about him. 27 years old. This is really his this is his first real significant time in the major leagues. He played a little bit last year too. What we've really seen from him is putting a lot of balls in play, not walking, right? It's below average walk rate, better than average strikeout rate, putting a ton of stuff in play, and it's working. Now, how long is it going to work for Wagaman? This is not a guy that was on really anyone's prospect radar. Again, he had a nice line last year in AA and AAA for the Angels, but that's because he was 26 years old playing in AA and AAA. So we don't really care that much that he had some better than average seasons down there, because he's much older than the competition. He really shouldn't have been down there. Like, he's almost old enough to be some of these guys' dads, obviously I'm joking, but it's quite a bit. He's been in pro ball since he left high school back in 2017. So he's been around for a long time. I think this is a streamer, right? Eric Wagaman is a guy you're going to be able to plug in at first, and importantly, the devastatingly shallow third base position, right? At one point, we thought this position was crazy deep. It's super top heavy. And if you just lost Jazz Chisholm, this is probably one of the moves you're going to have to make. Not nearly the dynamic athlete that Jazz is, but Eric Wagaman can give you keep hitting 250, 260, hit a couple home runs. The rest of it is dependent on the Miami Marlins offense, which I will generously say is inconsistent because they got a lot of free swingers in this offense. They got a lot of guys trying to hit the ball a long way and missing really hard when they miss. There's only so many Matt Mervises, Connor Norbys, and Jesus Sanchez's you can have on a roster, right? They have 3. They have all 3 of those. That's a lot of those guys to have at one time because of what their skill set does and how horribly inconsistent it can be. So, yeah, I think Wagaman is the one that is going to be available in a lot of places that I'd go and grab. Not exciting names, but it's something. And then, here in the chat, they're saying, oh yeah, that's a great point. So Josh Smith is now the leadoff guy in Texas. He should be third base eligible, shortstop eligible in your league. So he's a more slappy guy. He has a little bit of power and speed combo. He was sort of a sexy play last season. Josh H. Smith, I should say. He's fine, right? He's fine. In a 12-team league, he is fine. He is replacement level. He can be replacement level at 3 different positions usually. So that's a useful thing. And NOELVI MARTE probably got scooped. I do want to say something about NOELVI MARTE, though. So he's not first base eligible. He's third base eligible. But if you lost Jazz, that's what you're thinking about. Here's the thing about NOELVI MARTE. I love that he's having some production. And in NOELVI MARTE's rookie season, we saw a glimpse of the guy that we're like, hey, this is a potential 20 home run, 20 stolen base or better player. And that was really cool. And he's looking real good right now, right? He's got 3 home runs in 18 games, hitting 297. Thing about that I mentioned on Twitter, if you're following me at If the Chew Fits, trying to be a little more active there lately, had an appropriate call out that I haven't been active because I hadn't been. Thing about that. So 25% of NOELVI MARTE's extra base hits as of May 3rd and RBI, so a quarter of his extra base and RBI were against Jorge Mateo and Gary Sanchez in the giant blowout of the Reds over the Orioles. So he got a bunch of stats off position players. He's probably not going to get that opportunity again. Another 25% and over a third of his RBI total were in Coors. So that's about half of his extra base hits and over half of his RBI are in 4 games, right? In fact, it's actually 2 or 3 plate appearances against position players and then a weekend in Coors. That's where a lot of this production is coming from. Now, NOELVI MARTE has talent. He is a 20 to 25 home run, 20 to 25 stolen base guy who can have decent ratios. However, what you've seen so far is probably not the breakout signs that you want them to be because of the situation. You can't do this kind of deep dive on everyone, but I remembered he got a bunch of stuff out of that one blowout in Baltimore. And like 4 games of his 18. It's where like all of his stats are coming from. And so it's still very grain of salt time. Absolutely should scoop NOELVI MARTE if he is out there, if you need power and speed. I think he's got way more upside than Josh Smith or Eric Wagaman or any of the guys that we talked about. He's got way more upside. His floor is also abysmal, right? What we saw last season after he came back from his PED suspension. So NOELVI MARTE, someone to keep watching, but he's not a trade target for me right now, just because it's hard to trust these numbers so far, because of where they came from.
I've got one more corner infield name for you, and it's one that might hit a little bit close to home. It's Detroit Tigers third baseman who is now outfield eligible, Javi Baez. What do you think about Baez's recent spike in performance?
I love Javi. I love Javi so much. El Mago, love him. For fantasy, this is a stream and bail situation. Right? There is nothing that's really suggesting this is a different guy. What this is a guy who's hot, a guy who has shown us that he has the ability to be useful in fantasy for short stretches, but he is no longer like the season-long guy. Look, I'm adding him in 15-teamers. I'm doing it because I need third baseman. Third base is super weak, and that's why we're talking about it, because third base is a really tough position to fill, and that's what he can fill. So I'd go ahead and say, if you got to scoop up Javi and none of those other names I talked about, like Josh H. Smith, NOELVI MARTE, even Eric Wagaman, I think I like all those guys better for longer periods than Javi. But I also love baseball, and Javi is baseball, man. You can say what you want about Javi Baez and the fact that he swings at everything and that he makes weird errors. Dude plays hard. Like Javi Baez is trying to win baseball games. Right? He can't do it as well as he used to, but he's still trying to win. So I love Javi. I don't mind you scooping him, but it's a short-term play until something else interesting pops up on your wire.
Well, hopefully we'll be popping up as an interesting piece on your wire here in just a minute when we get back from our break after this. That was a terrible outro. I don't know where that
leave it in.
We'll be back. Bye. Welcome back to Hacks and Jacks. Scott Chu here with Brett Ford. Scott, we've got some IL guys coming back and contributing, and it's very exciting to have these names back. Some good news finally after talking about all the guys that were out. We got to replace. San Diego infielder Luis Arias coming back from the 7-day concussion IL, and then two guys making their season debuts coming off season the injuries to begin the season, and that's Toronto outfielder Dalton Varsho and Cincinnati catcher Tyler Stephenson. Some excitement around those three names?
Yeah, so I'll start with the catcher, Tyler Stephenson. This is a guy who has the potential to be better than a streaming catcher, right? So definitely a scoop. I think the toughest decision that I've seen someone having to make is if Tyler Stephenson was out there on your wire, or, for some reason you just had him, and you also have JT Realmuto. I'm not sure who I like better rest of the season, but it's probably Tyler Stephenson hitting in that small ballpark. He just hit a home run today, Sunday. And JT Realmuto, man, I don't know what he's got left in the tank. And I feel like I'm just like, being mean to these older players, but some of these guys, I'm not just talking about like sort of older, like just crossed 30. I'm talking about like, I've not been super nice to, like Marcus Semien, who we'll probably talk about later, or JT Realmuto. These are guys with tons of mileage. And not as DHs either. Like these guys play their position all the time. So I'm not sure how much is left there. With Luis Arias, he's Luis Arias. You know exactly what he is. He's a trope we use constantly because it makes it, he's a great example of how I can explain certain players to people who don't know about those other players. I'm like, well, he's like Luis Arias light. You know exactly what I'm talking about because that's what Luis Arias is. It's what it'll continue to be. Now, Dalton Varsho. If your league gives you points for flair, you got about 1 million of them with that behind the back catch when he tripped and fell in center field. That was sweet. For fantasy purposes, though, Dalton Varsho is a volatile asset at best. He is hot right now. He can run a little bit. He doesn't run like he used to when he was in Arizona, but he can steal probably low double-digit bases if they play him all year in center field, which they probably will. And he can hit like almost 20 home runs. But it's going to come with just brutal ratios and horrible cold streaks because that's what he is. He's a guy who hits a ton of stuff in the air and is just streaky. Every player is streaky to an extent. Dalton Varsho feels even streakier because his highs go a little high and his lows are low and long. That is not what we're looking for. So he is a streaming outfielder while he's hot right now, if you really need one, but he's not on the, I actually refrained from putting him on the hitter list, even though I knew, he was healthy. He could have been there. I held him off. He'll probably come back in, but it's going to be in that bottom tier.
He's one of those guys that I feel like the fantasy community is still in love with for his catcher eligibility, which is like 3 years gone now. It was like everybody fell in love with him because he's this guy that's going to play the outfield, but he's catcher eligible and it's awesome. And that's not a thing anymore. It hasn't been a thing for 3 years, but here we are still talking about Dalton Varsho.
Well, and the fact that he was a catcher that ran, he stole some bases. He walked a bunch. He's walking a bunch right now. And he's also got a 42% strikeout rate or 41. Granted, again, that he's only been back for like 5 games, but this is a guy who walks below, I'll call him an average walk rate and consistently just hits for sub 300 OBP. He's just the kind of player he is. And that's not changing. This is the guy. It's not bad luck. It's not any factor that you hope can just go away. This is just the guy that he is. It's a streaky fly ball hitter, almost never hits line drives. Everything's up in the air. And when it doesn't leave the park, it's an out.
We'll move on to some call-ups here from AAA. We already talked about Samad Taylor a little bit, the Seattle outfielder, come up to probably just fill the gap on Dylan Moore's injury absence. But then Baltimore infielder Coby Mayo and the Los Angeles Dodgers infielder HYESONG Kim are both making their debut this week and, finally getting the call. Both a little bit anticipated. Mayo had a cup of coffee with the Orioles last year. Kim, obviously, an offseason signing for the Dodgers. Do you anticipate either of them, seeing fantasy relevance in, 15 teamers, 12 teamers, anything like that?
Yeah. So Mayo and Kim are notable names, right? Coby Mayo, one of the top one of the top prospects for Baltimore. A bunch of them already graduated, so he might have even been the top one at this point. But he's an interesting guy. He came up, like you said, for almost 50 plate appearances last year, and they were terrible. That's Baltimore's luck right now. They bring up their top prospects, and they just really struggle at the major league level. I'm not going to try to pretend to know why that is. Mayo was hitting pretty well in the minor leagues this season, though. He was obviously very good last year in the minor leagues. This is a guy who can probably, hit a decent number of home runs, like 20 something home runs. If you were to play the rest of the season, it's probably like something like 17 to 20. And I think he's got a shot to do it. I'm not really sure how else they want to handle third base in Baltimore, because they've been running Ramon Urias for forever, it feels like. And it's always felt like a placeholder. I mean, eventually Jordan Westberg will be back. And I think that is part of the long-term future. But also, like, they've been platoon. This team is weird, man. Like, they platoon everybody. They've got guys on the roster who have just no real business being there. Like Dylan Carlson, who's a fine defender usually, but it's a weird roster. Jordan Westberg was struggling as well. Although, again, we do think he'll be back pretty soon. And they're even saying he may not need, he may not need a rehab. So long story short, Coby Mayo's cool when he's starting. I think he's got some pop, and I think he could hit for an okay batting average as well. He didn't last year, but I think he could. But his job may be fairly short-lived if Westberg does come back right away, and they decide to just put him back at third base. They have some other things they could do probably, but I don't know what they're necessarily going to do. So, they're already very left-handed. It's a weird roster. So Coby Mayo, interesting. I'm not sure I'm spending a ton of fab to get him in 12 teamers right now, just because I don't know what that role looks like long-term. Now, on the other side of the country, you go over to LA, you got HYESONG Kim, who just was crushing it in the minors, doing a fantastic job. He's going to get called up, but I don't know what position he's going to play regularly. Tommy Edman did go down, and I guess, in theory, you'd think they were going to put him at second base, but HYESONG Kim's been up for 2 days and they haven't done that. Right. So they went with Chris Taylor and they went with Kike Hernandez, the two guys who I thought they were going to use anyway. So I'm not really sure what the point of calling up HYESONG Kim was. And I can't really recommend him in 12 teamers because it doesn't seem like you're going to play him at all. Now, I wish I could tell you that this was because it was two lefties. No, they were both righties. They faced two righties this weekend, and HYESONG Kim, a lefty, did not get a shot at second base. Chris Taylor and Kike Hernandez did, and they're both right-handed. So I got to tell you, I just don't think there's going to be a lot of playing time there for Kim. So Mayo has some in the short term, at least until Jordan Westberg is back, which is probably fairly soon. And then we don't know what's going to happen with HYESONG Kim. I don't even know why they bothered calling him up if they were going to sit him for 2 days. Just call him up today. A couple teams have done this now. It just drives me bonkers. Don't call up a guy and bench him for 2 days, right? Call him up when you're ready to put him in the freaking lineup so that when he gets called up, this is my first major league game, so he can actually play. Sorry, just, pinch hitting doesn't count. He did get a pinch hit appearance. Cool. Just let him play.
Yeah, this Coby Mayo thing feels like what the Orioles did with Connor Norby last year when they brought him up for a couple weeks to kind of showcase him and then jettisoned him to Miami for a bucket of balls and Trevor Rogers, how's that working out for you, Mike Elias?
Bucket of balls. That's what they got.
So yeah, as an Orioles fan, I feel like the window is closing and I don't like it, but is what it is. That's coming from a guy who has a 21-year-old shortstop who's an MVP caliber guy. And I probably shouldn't be complaining because I get to watch Gunnar Henderson every day. But anyway, we do have one slightly depressing demotion. And Scott, I'm going to do my best to work as many terrible, terrible puns into this lead up as I can.
The floor is yours.
This is a whopper of a transaction. the Rangers ordered their burger to go. Rangers fans this weekend were wondering, where's the beef? And of course, my reaction was, what, a burger? Whataburger? I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm not from Texas. Jake Burger got sent to AAA. He was a guy that we all we are so confused because we drafted him in like the 10th round. I personally didn't realize things were that bad. For the, I knew he was in and out of the lineup, but never expected the Rangers to shack up their roster like this. It's kind of crazy. I think that was 7. I might have gotten 8. I don't know. The Shake Shack one was a stretch, so I won't count that one. But I feel pretty good about it. Jake Burger to AAA. Scott, what are we doing?
That was so much to absorb. I loved it. Just to be clear, actually, I think my favorite was the Whataburger one because you're like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm doing it. Transition. Let's go. So with Jake Burger, I think the thing that gets me about Jake Burger is, what did Texas think they were getting here? This is a streaky power guy, right? He goes through these slumps and then he hits 30 home runs. Like we've seen it for 2 straight seasons. They were getting exactly what they signed up for. Like, they paid him, and I don't understand it, because this wasn't something that was so different than what we've seen in the past for slumps, right? In fact, he had a much, much worse slump last year, right? Like in May, it was significantly worse, like one of the worst hitters in baseball for that period. Whereas in this slump, it's been bad, but he was actually like showing some signs of life. I don't understand this. I wish I could say I did and give you some sort of like strategy behind it. It's nothing besides them, I guess, deciding they'd rather play Josh Smith. That's all this is. So here's the thing. You cannot hold him in 12 teamers because he's not on the IL and you probably don't have an NA spot. If you do, this is actually a decent use of one, because this is a player with the ability to hit 30 home runs in major leagues. And we know that because he's done it, almost twice. He hit 34 home runs in 29. We know what he is, but apparently Texas didn't. So I'm just frustrated. I really don't understand this. Why him and not Semien? Right? Like, I know why, I do, but like the whole offense is doing bad. But what the right thing they did was firing their hitting coach, right? That made sense. Sending Burger down, like, I hope it's because he peed in somebody's Cheerios in the clubhouse or something, because otherwise this really makes no sense. And I don't think he'd do that. He doesn't seem like that kind of guy. But I can't make sense of the move. I can't tell you when he'll be back because I don't even know why he went down. But yeah, like Jock Peterson had just been like miserable forever and they didn't send it. I don't get it, but whatever.
The only thing that I can think of is that like maybe he's some sort of locker room problem. I don't like you said, like maybe he peed in someone's Cheerios. Like that's really the only thing that would make sense. Or just the Rangers are lacking patience. I don't get it. It's like you said, the whole lineup has been abysmal. And if there's one guy that could turn it around like that, it would be Jake Burger, right? Like
what is a 29-year-old going to do in AAA? What exactly are you asking him to work on?
Ask because Eric Wagaman.
Yeah, well, at least he's 20. Like he was 26, right? Like he didn't have a lot of gray hairs yet. Like, I mean, Burger doesn't really have hair, but if he did, I'm sure a couple are gray. But like, again, this is one of those moves that doesn't make sense. And because it doesn't make sense, you can't really do anything with it. He's not a buy low. He's not a stash. He's not really anything. You just got to let him go and see when they decide to bring him back, which will probably be just as arbitrary. The one thing I'll tell you not to do is look at his minor league numbers, because I don't care. I don't care if Jake Burger hits 1 million home runs. That is actually what I expect him to do. The only time I'll care about his minor league numbers if he's also bad there. That would concern me.
Yeah, and Burger is one of those guys that he's going to mash at the AAA level, and he's going to get called back up, and he could have.
He's going to just be Jake Burger. which is a guy who hits a bunch of home runs and is very streaky while he does it. Think like a poor man's Kyle Schwarber who also doesn't walk. It's Jake Burger.
I mean, he hit 22 home runs in July, August, and September combined last year after hitting just 7 through June. So
because that's the type of player you picked up. Now, it stinks that he's not very good defensively. That's probably part of the problem, right? Like if he was better defensively, I think teams might be more willing to just kind of like let it go and wait. But they haven't really been DHing him, which is how Miami sort of, I think, went through that. Like they started him at third base quite a bit, but they ended up just DHing him a lot, like 50 times or something like that. So again, there's just very little to take from this. Again, apart from the fact that Jake Burger is quite bad defensively. Oh, actually, you know what? Texas has been playing him at first, and he's bad there too. Like just because he's bad at fielding. But like you have the guy you signed up for. It's not like he was like swinging and missing a bunch more. None of that stuff. He just was in a slump. You send him down.
Well, we'll be back after we recover from those burger puns and everything else that we just had to sit through. We're still trying to process this demotion. So we'll be back after this quick break. Those puns were awful, but I'm glad that we got them in. Thank you for
let us move on. Let us move on.
Yeah, before they catch up, right? Welcome back to Hacks and Jacks. Brett Ford here, Scott Chu, bringing his top 150 hitters list every week to pitcher list. Scott, you have an update from May 1st this week. I can't believe we're already in May. It's blowing my mind. We've got a lot of risers, a lot of fallers. And really, I think the first guy we should touch on is probably the best hitter in the majors right now, and that's Aaron Judge. I mean, I know he doesn't move from tier 1 to tier S or whatever we would put above tier 1, but he's just absolutely hitting missiles right now, and nobody seems to be able to figure him out.
Well, they're not going to, right? Like when healthy, Aaron Judge is one of the 2 best hitters in the league, right? It's him and Shohei Ohtani and then everybody else. Now for fantasy, I've got Bobby Witt in that tier. I've been thinking about that, whether he should remain there. He did hit a home run today, which helps a little bit, but that Kansas City offense has been kind of slow. Not what we expected. We probably should have expected some regression because everything went right for them last year besides Vinny P getting hurt. But we'll kind of see how that goes. Here's the thing. This is one of those rankings changes that isn't much, right? Again, it's not much. It's one spot. And if you had Aaron Judge as your number 1 guy, instead of Ohtani, like fine. I'm not going to argue with you about it. I think what stands out to me about him is just like he lost. It was a little bit about losing Soto, but for the most part, it's like, look, when he's healthy, he's really good. And he's healthy, right? He looks great playing right field. He's carrying this offense. I was kind of curious about like, okay, so they're not getting Giancarlo Stanton back at all. Juan Soto is, obviously he's across town now. He's not going to be playing for him. So what's left in this lineup? And it's like the emergence of Ben Rice and like Paul Goldschmidt. Volpe's been pretty good, I guess, but nothing like the lineup they had last year. And Judge is just as good. So any lingering doubt here, if I was going to I realized that keeping him a second, if someone every week I say, okay, at least for like that top tier, what order I have them, what I ask myself is if someone says I'm wrong and this guy should be first, what is my justification? And generally speaking, in the top tier, you can justify it, right? You can say, hey, look, Shohei Ohtani also can hit 50 home runs. He's not, like, interestingly enough, he's really not an injury risk as a DH. And he can steal 50 bags, right? That is something that Aaron Judge absolutely will not do. Could he do it? I don't know, maybe, but why? Right? Like, it doesn't make sense for him to try to do that. That's a long way for a 6'7" monster to fall, to like dive at second base. Like, that's just a big man dropping his whole body down. It scares the crap out of me. So, but it got to the point now where it's just like, look, Aaron Judge is so good right now. If you had Aaron Judge and someone offered you Shohei Ohtani, you probably wouldn't take it, right? You probably wouldn't. And that's okay. The top tier, like we have a lot of tiers in baseball right now that are really, really fun. Like really the whole first like 3 rounds of the draft, maybe even 4, are just crazy loaded, crazy deep. The back half of the first round is wildly deep. And, you know, the top also has some of the best talent we've seen for a decade. So it's fun. That's Aaron Judge. The only knock on Judge is the health, right? Will he stay healthy? And he has more often than not. So, but that's the only knock on him now.
Speaking of health concerns and guys that are going to climb the list when they're healthy, we move to Christian Yelich, the Milwaukee Brewers outfielder. He bumps up to tier 6 this week, number 42 on the list. He's up 11 spots. Yelich and the Brewers offense are doing things. What do we think?
Well, of course he like stopped hitting like right when that article came out. But he'd been extremely hot for about 2 weeks leading up to that, stealing some bases. I mean, that was big. So seeing him, you know, he stole a couple bases, hit some home runs, and he did it all, like a bunch of it, like on a road trip in fairly tough parks to hit: San Francisco and St. Louis. He was also in Chicago, but he actually didn't hit there. So it was just a thing where it's like, look, it doesn't look like his back is bothering him. So while that's true, he can move up a little bit more than where he'd been. But of course, he is a constant risk, right? Like that's just the reality of it. Also interesting that he's hitting 3rd and 4th. Now he'd hit leadoff for the Brewers a lot the last several years. Having him go down to 3rd or 4th means they're still letting him run, which is great. And he's got a much better chance at RBI. Now runs versus RBI, you know, like that's more of a need-based thing, but love that Christian Yelich is out there hitting 3rd and 4th and really cleaning up for that team, who is a pretty decent offense, especially at the top. It's not super deep lineup. And you know, how deep it is really just depends on how well Rhys Hoskins is hitting, which usually isn't great. But that Churio, Terang, Contreras, Yelich top 4, no matter how they sort of order those guys, that's going to be a really, really juicy place to find runs or RBI or whatever it is you're after.
Oh, we stay in the outfield and we stay in the division, the NL Central. Pete CROW-ARMSTRONG, Chicago Cubs outfielder, moves up 21 spots to number 53 on the list, tier 7. He's had a tremendous couple weeks. How do we know that he's not just a streaky power speed guy?
What if I told you we don't know? Right? Because he doesn't walk. That's the thing. Pete CROW-ARMSTRONG doesn't walk. He's really trying to put balls in play. He does it quite well. He's hitting the ball even harder than he did last year, which isn't like crazy hard, but you know, a 40% hard hit rate's pretty good, better than last year. He's plenty of barrels. He's almost got as many, well, not almost, but he's like he's like 2/3 of the way, I think, to his barrel rate or number of barrels from last season, in 1/3 of the plate appearances. So what we know right now is that it's not luck. Right? What Pete CROW-ARMSTRONG's doing right now is not luck. And that's enough. That is enough for us right now to say, yes, like let's buy in a bit more. Right now, what's going to happen is he's going to have a slump. It's going to happen because he's a human being and that's what human beings do. The question is, how long does he bounce? Like, how long does it take him to bounce back? And how deep does the slump go? So what we saw in his, you know, first longer season last year was really, he was kind of bad for a long time. He really struggled for most of the season. And then it's late in the season, starting in about August, we really see him kind of take off and stay good and then sort of start coming back down at the end of the season. So he opens really cold and his final like month or so is well, like 3 weeks are pretty cold, but there's this sort of juicy month-long thing. So we know that Pete CROW-ARMSTRONG can be good for a month, and that's what he's done. And it's not luck. And it's great to see what he's capable of, right? Which right now is 9 home runs and 12 stolen bases. That is a ridiculous number with the 271 batting average. The batting average is the thing I do expect to go down. Even though he doesn't strike out a lot, he's a fly ball hitter. So I expect that batting average just can't stay the way that it is. But with CROW-ARMSTRONG, what you need to know is that when he's cruising, like when he's hot. So even if he's a streaky player, what you want to know is when you're hot, what does it look like? Right? Because like we know what Kyle Schwarber looks like. He's hot and cold. And we know that when he's hot, he's like the best power, one of the top 3 power hitters in baseball, because that's what he can do when he's hot, and he can be hot for at least a month, sometimes longer, and that he can do that multiple times in a season. What we know with Pete CROW-ARMSTRONG is that when he's hot, he can be one of the best power speed combos in the game. What we don't know is how often he'll do that in a season and how long it can last. Right. And we also don't know just how deep those slumps can be. We have some idea. We saw it in his first year. We don't know if he's been able to fix that at all. So that's what we're watching going forward. But for now, all that matters is we see what you're capable of when you're hot. We know that this is like probably around the peak of what he can do. Now the question is, how often can he get here?
Yeah, finally seeing the ceiling on Pete CROW-ARMSTRONG certainly brings some Chicago Cubs fans some smiles there. Staying in the Windy City, we move to the South Side, where Luis Robert has moved up 10 spots this week to number 78. That's tier 10. And another power speed guy who is starting to look like he is maybe developing in Chicago, which would be a very novel thing for the White Sox.
I don't know about that. What we do know is happening in Chicago is 2 things. Number one, Luis Robert Jr. is walking a ton. Now, part of that, I think, is because you can't really see it in like the zone rate. Like that was my first thought. I was like, maybe they're just not pitching to him. And I need to dive in on the zone rate when he's got 2 strikes. I wonder if pitchers are just avoiding the crap out of him, because who else is going to hit, right? For the White Sox, nobody. Once you get to 2 strikes, I'm not sure I'd consider throwing him another strike, right? Like let him walk. That's probably why he has 13 stolen bases. A lot of people wanted to cut Luis Robert Jr. We told everyone, please don't yet, right? Just wait. And that's because we know what Luis Robert Jr. looks like when he's hot. And like Pete CROW-ARMSTRONG, it's one of the, it's a top power speed guy in the game. He's showing us a whole new level of speed. His previous career high stolen bases was 23 of them. He did it in 100 games last year. Look, this is still a really fragile. I mean, as far as injury risks go, he's one of the highest injury risks in the league. We know that he's got a boatload of talent, and we know that he's on a miserable team, and we know that he strikes out a bunch and he's really streaky. I've said it several times now. This is the hardest player to rank in fantasy baseball. I would love to see a team like the Dodgers or really Houston would be another good one. Just go and get Luis Robert, because he fit your team great. And I trust that those teams could do something with this ball of talent that is Luis Robert Jr., who's not even 28 years old yet. But it's going to be a lot of ups and downs. We know that. We know that the batting average is probably not going to be great because he strikes out a ton, even though he hits the ball hard, right? And he hits, he doesn't hit a lot of line drives. He puts a lot of stuff in the air, blah, blah, blah. But, this is a guy, Luis Robert Jr., that is really hard to trade for, especially when he's hot. But he's a guy you're just going to have to hold for now, I think. I mean, he stole 2 more bases today. Actually, I'm sorry. He's got 15 stolen bases now because he stole 2 more today. A guy you can just hold, and at least because even when he was cold this year, right, and the batting average was terrible, he was running. Because how else are the White Sox going to score runs? They're letting him run. So even when Luis Robert is cold, he's going to run and he's going to contribute to your fantasy team. Yeah, I know he's going to hurt you in some places. Everybody hurts you in some places when they're cold. At least he's still helping somewhere.
We take a look at second baseman from the Seattle Mariners, Jorge Polanco. He's moved up 15 spots to tier 13, number 110 on the list. Might be the hottest hitter in baseball, not named Aaron Judge. Is he back to what he was, 4 or 5 years ago when he was all-star caliber?
No, but that's okay. So there's a really good article over on Fangraphs by Davey Andrews where he really talks about, and it's a great use of rolling charts. So one of the reasons that Polanco goes up, he is only playing against righties right now. He can't swing from the right side. He's got an oblique issue. So he's in a platoon. He's on the large side of it, but he's in a platoon. But Jorge Polanco is very importantly both second and third base eligible. That's key. Both those positions. Second base a little easier to fill than third base, but having a guy who can be both, especially at a time of year when we're still seeing lots of injuries and things like that, I think really key. And he's got some pop, but this is actually not the best he's ever been against lefties, right? So Davey Andrews does a nice job incorporating rolling charts into that article. I suggest you go read it. If you go and visit Jorge Polanco's player page, you can go find it on Fangraphs, this article about his, how he's just sort of platooning from one side. But Jorge Polanco's capable of just lighting up left-handed pitch or right-handed pitching for a while. And there's plenty of that in the league. And he's going to be able to keep doing that. Again, not a full-time player. We don't really have a sense of when he's going to go back to swinging from the other side. And also they're not having him come in against lefties swinging from the left side. They're not really interested in that either because he's a switch hitter. So, that part's interesting, but he moves up because he is hot. He covers two incredibly important positions for fantasy right now. And, this is something he can do for a while. How long? I don't know, but it's something he can do for a while. And that part of the rank, like the difference between like being in the 110s and the 130s just isn't that much, right? Like some of it's just like a crime of opportunity and a potential ceiling. Cause maybe he is back, right? Maybe, probably not, but maybe he can be a guy who is a full season contributor. So when you're hot and you have the ability to be a full season contributor at two important infield positions, yeah, sure. I'll move you up.
Quick little, we'll call it a name game. We'll just throw out two names. Let me know who you prefer. I know who you have higher on the list. But for rest of season, would you prefer having second base and third base eligible Jorge Polanco or second base and third base eligible Maikel Garcia from the Kansas City Royals?
Oh, so this one's kind of easy because I don't have to really answer you. If you want speed, it's Maikel Garcia. He's the only one who's going to do it. If you want anything else, I'd probably go after Polanco. Although Maikel Garcia is hitting hot. He's got a couple home runs, but don't get too excited. These home runs aren't going to stick around. We've seen Maikel Garcia do this a little bit, but it's Polanco for everything but speed.
Fair enough. We'll take a quick break. We'll get back with the guys who are falling down the hitters list. We'll be back right after this. All right, fallers. You good with just taking a look at the list real quick? Are you good with tackling Rutschman, Reynolds, and Doyle all at once?
I can do a bunch of guys at once, yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
I'll phrase it better when we're live, but yeah.
I was going to leave it. I was just going to leave it.
Got to be a better way to say that, bud.
Okay. Welcome back to Hacks and Jacks. Brett Ford here. Scott Chu there. Scott, we've got 150 hitters list here. Your 150 hitters list article comes out every week on Pitchers List. We've got a handful of guys who haven't been performing the way we want them to recently, and so consequentially they're falling down the ranks of your list. We'll start in tier 8. ADLEY, Rutschman, Brian Reynolds, and Brenton Doyle have all dropped at least 15 spots this week. Is that just because they're cold hitters right now?
If that was the case, then a lot of guys would move a lot more often, and I ain't got the time for that. So with the three of them, the two that we start with are Rutschman and Reynolds, and it's because they're not really super high ceiling guys. What they're supposed to be is really high floor. And so when they have prolonged slumps and they're on teams that maybe aren't, we didn't expect the Pirates to be good, but I think we expected the Baltimore offense to be a little better than this. So these prolonged slumps lower their floor a little bit, especially because of their team context. So when you're a floor guy and you lose floor, it hurts you in the ranks. And also the strength of catcher at the top, right? Because now we've got, I thought ADLEY was a guy who's going to be able to be like a potential number one catcher. And now it's hard to see him get higher than 3 because Cal Raleigh and William Contreras just continue to mash, particularly Cal goodness gracious, that dude can hit. He might hit 40 home runs. So, and then with Bryan Reynolds, he's an outfielder, especially in, 3 outfield leagues. He can be kind of painful to hang on to. He's going to get to his numbers. We've seen Bryan Reynolds slump like this. Even for a bad team, he gets to his numbers. They're not sexy numbers, but they're good enough. They're more than good enough to be someone you roster all the time. I think the one I'm the most worried about, so to speak, is Brenton Doyle, because with Brenton Doyle, I don't have a lot to go to fall back on. I've got one good season, right? And it was a little up and down because he plays for the Rockies and that's just the way it is. But I've also got one really bad season in 2023 for Brenton Doyle. And this season, he's not striking out like he did in his bad season, but it's not, the rest of the profile is not great. It's only 3 stolen bases, which is not anywhere where it's not close to what we need him to be. He was the 30 stolen base guy last year. We kind of want him running more. Now, some of this might just be bad luck with Doyle, because he is hitting the ball pretty hard. I mean, he's hitting the ball just fine in terms of, power. He's getting the ball up in the air, but not too much. It's like a decent split of ground ball, fly ball. I'm not entirely sure I understand what's going on here, but the biggest thing was the drop in steals and the terribleness of his team just made me bring him down a bit. And the fact that he's only an outfielder, and there's lots of good ones.
Yeah, I think fantasy managers might be having flashbacks to Nolan Jones with his breakout season, and then the year after, the fallout after that. Hopefully Doyle doesn't continue to stumble in the same way that Jones did.
Don't trust the Rockies. Don't trust the Rockies. Don't trust that they're going to fix guys. These guys got to figure it out themselves.
We move on to a hitter who must have read your column before he took the field on Sunday, because he hit 2 home runs. That's San Francisco shortstop Willy Adames. He's moved down to tier 10, number 77 on the list, down 17 spots. And who knows, he may be moving back up after Sunday's performance if he can sustain that throughout the week.
Yeah, with Adames, again, another guy we've seen get off to slow starts and get to decent numbers. With Adames, keep in mind that despite the slow start, I've still got him in the top 100, number 77 right now. All I've really done is sort of adjust where I think Adames can finish this year. So getting to his numbers from last year could be tough, although he did have a bad month like this once last year. But you're going to be asking him to really turn it on for the rest of the season. But, I think he can still be somewhere between 2023 and 2024, which 2023 was 24 home runs, not very many steals and bad ratios, but plenty of RBI and runs. Last season, of course, 32 home runs, 21 stolen bases, decent ratios, a bunch of counting stats. I think counting stats can still be there. I think he could get to 25 home runs still. The ratios will probably just be a little ugly, but this is still a very, very usable shortstop at a position that, again, off the wire can be tough to fill. So he's someone that, I'm just adjusting a little bit. A guy in the infield, really 2 guys in the infield I'm a lot more concerned about that I also dropped down the list and they fell outside the top 100, which is, again, an important, not like a huge distinction, but again, these guys dropped over 20 spots. So this is ALEC BOHM and Andres Gimenez. And that's because these were supposed to be floor guys, right? ALEC BOHM was this guy who, got to bat in the heart of this great Phillies lineup, driving a bunch of runners, even without premier power. ALEC BOHM is hitting 8th against righties right now. That is not, like, his skill set is just not something that's super conducive to getting fantasy output down there. And that was even though he had a long hit streak, he didn't move up in the batting order at all. He just stayed down there, right? He's got an on base streak of like half a month and the Phillies just don't care. And part of that is because he only has like 3 or 4 extra base hits in that whole span. None of them are home runs. It's like 3 doubles and a triple. And that was all sort of in the first half of this stretch. Look, he's still finding points because he puts the ball in play a lot, doesn't strike out, but the ceiling for ALEC BOHM is just gone. And for Andres Gimenez, he was in a really weird position because, as we've joked on this podcast, he was batting 4th for the Blue Jays. It didn't make sense, but they apparently figured that out too. So now Andres Gimenez bats 9th. So that's a problem. Andres Gimenez bats 9th. He's a guy that can steal some bases, but he doesn't have a ton of power, as evidenced by 9 home runs last year. He's only got 3 now. Now he has 9 stolen bases, which is cool, but he's only hitting 179. And he's not someone that walks a lot. So this is going to be a tough profile to keep going. Andres Gimenez, probably droppable in your standard 12-team league, especially if you don't have like a middle infield, because there probably is someone better. But both BOHM and, I talked about replacement level a lot lately. Both, BOHM being ranked at 107, Gimenez being ranked at 125 in a 10 or 12 team league, especially a shallower one. This is around the replacement level. I know I rank 150 guys, but that doesn't mean I think 150 guys are above replacement level. Every league is different. So these two guys are probably ones that are sort of really getting on the cusp of your replacement level, and that, we're never high ceiling guys to begin with. So it might be time to start streaming upside instead.
Well, you talk about kind of that replacement level, and a guy who has dropped out of your top 100 way down almost below that replacement level this week is Kansas City Royals first baseman Vinnie Pasquantino. The Pasquatch down to number 131 overall, tier 15. He's down 37 spots this week. Now, he did hit one home run on Sunday in Baltimore, but does that really change the sample size of what he's put together so far this year?
Unfortunately, no. Right. So the reason he falls this far is because first base has seen, again, this big influx of talent. There's a bunch of guys now at first base that are viable plays. And Vinnie Pasquantino was supposed to be a floor guy. He was supposed to be this guy that looked like it's only going to be 22-ish home runs, but the ratios will be there. Look, it's nice that Vinnie P has stopped striking out so much. That's a big deal. That's something that we're paying attention to. And if you want to hold him, he does have 3 home runs in the last, 7 games. So that's cool, right? Including, in fact, it might be a little bit more than that, but he's sort of turning a corner, of course, because right after I write the article, he hits like 3 more home runs. But I do got a concern here because a lot of first basemen are good out there. So he's going to need to sustain this for a bit. And I'd really like to see him walking. This walking was a tool that Vinnie P was supposed to be bringing to the table, and it continues to drop. It's dropped ever since his first debut, and the strikeout rate has gone up. So not great trends, but hey, let's see what happens. He did just hit a bunch of home runs lately. You probably shouldn't drop him now if you kept him, but it's a fine wire we're walking right now.
Now, speaking of fine wire, you've got a couple guys hanging on by a thread in your top 150 hitters who started the year in a place that I thought they'd be kind of mainstays on most of my fantasy rosters. And I've got at least one of these guys in a couple places. And that's Los Angeles Angels outfielder Jorge Soler. He's ranked 148th, down 49 spots. And then Texas Rangers second baseman Marcus Semien. He's 150. He rounds out your list. He's down 55 spots this week. And that's pretty much in the drop zone for most fantasy managers. And I know you talked about how you might have taken a little bit of heat on that in Reddit or on your Reddit AMA. Talk me through your reasoning on Soler and then Semien as well.
So Soler's another guy who, after the article posts, hits 2 home runs in the next 2 games. But this Angels offense is not good, right? Even with Zach Neto finally hitting at the top of the order, like he should have been the whole time, instead of Jorge Soler, Jorge Soler is doing a couple things that worry me, right? He's striking out too much. He's not really walking at all. He's got a couple home runs, but he's barely a top 150 hitter on the year right now. And it's outfield. It's an incredibly high replacement level in most leagues. So it's hard to justify holding him, especially when he's not doing the walking. Now, if the walking starts coming back, we'll talk, but it's really just been down and gotten worse throughout the season. So that's my concern there. And with Marcus Semien, I actually wanted to knock him off the list. We've talked about him a lot. It's a ton of mileage on this guy. He's done basically nothing for your fantasy team this year. It's really hard to understate. So he used to be, again, another high floor guy that was supposed to be like rock solid no matter what. Here's the thing. Marcus Semien used to be a great source of runs. Well, he's not leading off anymore. He's batting 5th for what has been a really disappointing offense. So that's a problem. He's not, he's not going to steal any bases. He's got 2 home runs as of today. He's the 46th ranked second baseman on the Fangraphs player rater right now on the season. And while he's been a little better of late, he's certainly not been good. right? He's not been a player that I'm super excited to have on my fantasy team. And there are second basemen that are available that are almost certainly more interesting than a guy who is neither scoring runs nor driving in runners, even when he is getting the hits, right? Like he had a 3-hit game. He got 1 RBI. He got 2 runs scored. That was nice, but he got 1 RBI, right? Like there's not a lot of juice out of this offense to squeeze, especially when you're batting 5th, right? And I don't know when they're going to be ready to put him back to lead off. I'm sure they'd like to, but he's got to earn it. So Marcus Semien is a guy who I'm really not that interested in holding right now in standard 12-team leagues. Looking 15 and deeper, you don't have a lot of a choice. But again, remember, you didn't pay like super top dollar for Marcus Semien. You spent an earlier round pick, but it wasn't like you picked him in the first 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 5 rounds, right? That's not really what happened. So, at second base, there's just other guys. If you haven't already picked them up, there's just other guys that are just potentially interesting that you can stream. Like Gavin Lux, when he's at home, is someone that's interesting. I mean, there's plenty. And I don't think you'll lose anything for it, is the thing. Like, I don't think that if you pick up Maikel Garcia, there's probably more juice there, right? You pick up Gavin Lux, especially when he's at home. There's something there, right? Like, I mean, don't go crazy and cut him for like Daniel Schneemann or something like that. But if a guy like that's on your wire, right? Like, go ahead. If Jorge Polanco was sitting out, I mean, I'd much rather have Jorge Polanco right now. Gleyber Torres, who was taken a lot later. Gavin Lux. I mean, Zach McKinstry's not great, but I'd stream that, right? With the right matchups. He's super. I mean, you can put him all over the place. He's been fine for the last few weeks, right? I think, again, maybe not like, I don't want to take him out for a part-time player, but if Dylan Moore came back and he had been, on the bench, I'd consider that. There's like names, right? Like maybe not Rami Gonzalez or Jeff McNeil or something silly, but even like Jackson Holiday just hit 2 home runs. I'd consider it, right? And play upside because Semien doesn't have a lot of that. Not anymore.
Well, talking about upside, is there anybody on your top 150 hitters list, taxi squad, didn't quite make the list that you want to mention before we sign off to this week?
So yeah, with the taxi squad, it's an interesting thing that we have with the taxi squad because it's not just like don't necessarily think of the taxi squad as like the next guys up. Like some of them are, and some of them are ones that I think you guys are going to ask me about and I need to talk about them. So, in there, a lot of these guys are going to be rostered. So I think the one I want to talk about, who I do think has a bunch of upside, but I need to throw some cold water on because I'm mean and that's what I do. Jordan Lawler. He is just crushing in the minor leagues right now and has nowhere to play for the D-backs. Geraldo Perdomo just keeps hitting, keeps doing good baseball things. And they got Ketel Marte back at second base. There's just nowhere for Jordan Lawler to play. Third base is going to be Eugenio Suarez. And even if they called up Lawler, it'd probably be in a platoon. So you can't get your hopes up too high on him. And that's a huge bummer, but it's kind of what we're stuck with. And that's really the case for a lot of these young guys that are coming up. We don't have a ton of clear paths to playing time, except for the ones that came up at the very beginning of the season. So it's kind of where we're at. But, I think it's going to be less about infusing a bunch of young talent in that are going to have these great opportunities and more of just, I think the biggest boost you're going to get right now are older guys getting out of slumps, right? What would have been Jake Berger if he didn't get sent down for what I consider to be not a good reason, at least not one that I've heard. So, keep an eye on all that stuff, but don't think that there's like like the next big stash. Like right now, there's just not a ton of openings. Now, injuries can happen, right? I didn't think COBY MAYO would get called up, but an injury happened. But even he did get called up, and now I don't know how long he's going to be there with Jordan Westburg coming back. It's ugly. So I would say your best bet right now is just keep waiting on some of your older guys that are struggling, because I do think they can turn it around in many cases. But it's, really, I'll just say again, like I did last week, figure out your league's replacement level, because that'll tell you what kind of gambles you can make.
Well, Scott, that about wraps it up for us, but we've got an exciting week ahead. We've got Spencer Torkelson in Coors Field.
Boom. Just like, we're torque dorks here. We get it, right? We love torque. Not hitting for a ton of average because he hits a bunch of balls in the air, and he's moved down a little in the order to 5th. That's largely because Riley Green is hitting again. Gleyber Torres came back, but dude hits bombs. What do you want him to do? Yeah, hits bombs.
As we always say, get torqued, nerds.
Get torqued, nerds. Yeah, he's got 10 home runs now on the year. That's the same total he had last year in about a third of the time. So
it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. Well, thank you, Scott, for your time tonight. It's been a blast as always. We'll be back next week with more hacks and jacks. Scott's top 150 hitters list is available on Pitcher List every week, updates midweek, and make sure you check it out. I'm Brett Ford at Fade That Man on social media. That's Scott Chu, If the Shoe Fits on socials. We'll be back next week. Thanks for tuning in. See you later.